The most unfortunate of dating stories I must recount is the incident involving the shoe. During my high school years, my closest friend was under strict parental supervision, forbidden to engage in courtship without the presence of another couple to oversee his actions. This was no pure case of progenitor protectiveness, as madness seemed a marked feature of his family line. Much like ichor from a stone, the unreasonable can precipitate no reason. In my junior year, after a rather dispiriting breakup with a quasi-girlfriend, I eschewed the notion of dating, much to the dismay of my friend. He had found favor with a young lady he had encountered within a house of law. He persistently urged me to re-enter the arena of dating, not out of concern for my well-being, but to further his own romantic intentions. After weeks of resisting his incessant entreaties, I was finally worn down by this proposition. He would engage both my date and expenses, so naught but my attendance would be required. In hindsight, I should have declined. An event premised on absurdity of such sort could hold no kindly fate in store, and yet he managed to further complicate matters. The arc of his moral descent remains obscure to me. Whether sinking desperation or an eager plunge brought his measures about, it is immaterial. He contacted a girl from his religious congregation, a girl profoundly besotted with him, inviting her to a romantic outing. The implication that he would be her partner remained unspoken but not unbroken, as I was informed he'd found me company for his plans. I would not learn of his transgressions until weeks past the event. I would have stopped this travesty had I known of it, and I would scream that solemn vow to even God and all his angels, as I likely will, with my dying breath. On the day of reckoning, my frugal preparations proceeded with minimal fanfare. I donned my favorite attire, comfortable yet sartorially offensive. Shorts of basket ball, flops which flipped, and a Baja hoodie. Though it afforded me great comfort, it rendered me a spectacle of eccentricity. Upon arriving at my friend's abode, I collected him and his date before proceeding to my own. It was at this juncture the farcical nature of the evening began to unfold. As I approached the door of my prospective date, her initial exuberance turned to disappointment, then disgust, and finally anger. Unaware she had been deceived to her prospective partner, I felt my wardrobe and its levity had been unjustly maligned. Seconds passed in mutual appraisal before the door was slammed in my face. The terror my friend radiated mixed with our baffled paralysis for the eternal heartbeats before our door once more opened. Her father, a man of imposing demeanor, invited me inside, explaining that his daughter was upstairs and would require some time, which we would use to talk. We did not talk. We did sit. He sat across from me, meticulously cleaning a pistol, a gesture I could not decipher as either a threat or merely the manner in which his age and sort of man would indulge in fidgeting. My offer of aid in this cleaning was rudely rebuffed, and so I simply observed, judging his skill to be middlingly adept. When my date finally descended, her fury was beyond my ken, though not beyond my recognition. Attributing her ire to my appearance, I endeavored to compensate with chivalrous gestures. Having escorted her to the car, her father called me back to the door, leaning into the most sacred margins of my personal space to issue a warning. Whatever you do to her, I will do to you. True bewilderment, in its most elevated form, consists not of lacking rationality, but of reason overwhelming all else, as it did in that moment. 3 such truths my reason bestowed me. Firstly, and to the detriment of the patriarch's character, his passable display of pistol maintenance had indeed been a threat. Secondly, even I, in the midst of my tism, intuited that no romantic overtures were fated to occur. Could he truly believe in a triumph of passions between myself and his daughter? Or even one of lusts? Only then did the third and least welcome line of deduction sink in. Was this man threatening my person with a bout of the fucking? In my throes, I gave my only response. I can't get pregnant. So thinking to expose his machinations for a farce, I was protected by my confidence in the separation of spheres. The veil between our world and the Omegaverse would preclude the patriarch's work from coming to fruition. In that instant, the nature of insanity was forever clarified to my interlocutor. One does not turn insane when, for a single instant, comprehending the vastness of truth. It is the following moment that rends the mind to shreds, when one has to fall back to mundanity, forever altered and yet uncomprehending of oneself. I, however, had countless experiences with such esoterics, and my bearings returned in time to make a vehicular escape, while the father was yet regaining the function of speech, though what he lacked for alacrity was more than compensated for by the volume and pathos of the words he left in our wake. In our era of blessed darkness, ignorant to mobile communication technologies that might have recalled her home, my date merely felt a moment of perplexion before her scowling could grace the deserving party and myself once more. We attempted a display of improvisational comedy, an experience the others felt to be marred by my anxious, uncontrollable laughter. Following the show, my friend suggested a walk in the park, a proposition soundly rejected by my date. Knowing what fate had already befallen her, I felt a great sense of mercy and released her a safe distance away from my home. Left to chaperone my friend and his date in a park, I climbed a rope tower 30 feet in height, seeking a natural panopticon with which to distance myself without forsaking my duties. However, my friend, oblivious to my intentions, intruded upon the tower of my solitude, followed by his date. The mercy I had already shown that night, the cosmos did not bestow back upon me, as I sat there while their sappy and sopping affections occurred well within audible distance, and my powers of dissociation revealed their value once more. When some collegiate members of our age cohort began shaking the spire my tormentors and I sat upon, the opportunity to flirtingly soothe and comfort was not lost on my friend, motivating me to descend and engage with the rude accosters of our unhallowed peak. After resolving the disturbance to raised middle fingers, I returned to my car, the day's chaos finally overwhelming me. Soon the students felt a whim to climb up themselves, prompting the core duo of her uncomfortable tricycle to climb down and return to the car, where my heart was hardening to a conclusion. I might not have been able to salvage the memory of that day, but I could brighten its ending by indulging in righteous pique, instructing my passengers to avoid any odd or untoward endeavors. I set out for the tower and began pilfering the shoes left behind by the college students in their ascent. Then I realized that the appearance of theft would undermine the purity of my motives. As such, I returned only the right shoe of every pair, gave myself a 100-foot head start, called out "nice shoes, assholes," and punctuated my escape with a diminutive jig. To all who might heed this caution, college students are swifter than one might anticipate. Despite my head start and the descent from the tower, I found myself a mere 5 seconds ahead by the time I reached my vehicle. I flung the door open, glanced into the back seat, saw no one, tossed the purloined shoes to the back, and heard 2 ows as confirmation of our collective's completeness. My friend and his date emerged moments later, having been engaged in peculiar activity in the back seat, invalidating my singular request. They clambered forward to inquire about the origins of the shoes, whereupon I confessed to my act of larceny. They responded with non-committal well wishes, which I accepted with a tact befitting my education. Speaking of fun, what were you doing back there? And at that point, for the first time in his life, I believe my friend was actually embarrassed.